So I wanted to take some time to talk about talents because I hadn't really seen many people address this at all. I mean, there may have been some other vids that have, but there's a lot of discussion going on in the Discord, and people normally are just asking what's the best talents for raiding, and it'll kind of depend on what what you want to do. So I'll just talk about the talents here, and hopefully make it a little bit easier for people to decide what builds they want to do themselves. So in the first tier, really the only choice is between Bone Chilling and Ray of Frost, and we can all just forget about Lonely Winter because it's complete trash and you should never take it. This right here is basically just preference. I mean, if you really feel like you need 2 blocks, you can do that, or if you figure out that you're just dying randomly and you would like to not do that, then you can take Cauteraz and then hopefully your Heather can save you. But Cauteraz, I don't know. Shimmer is just going to be, that's my personal choice. That's what a lot of people play. You get 2 blinks, you can blink while casting. It's pretty useful because you don't really lose any DPS as you're, but flying around all over the place, basically. In this tier, you have Incanter's Flow and Rune of Power. The only time you're ever really going to take Incanter's Flow is if you're doing this exact build. Probably. There may be other times that I've seen that it could come up, maybe in a dungeon, but really, I don't think so. I think this is pretty much, you're going to try to just cheese as much damage as possible out of Thermal Void whenever you have Incanter's Flow, and that's pretty much the only build I know of that you're going to be running Incanter's Flow with. This is also fairly good for raiding, but it's not very good for dungeons. It's absolutely awful for dungeons, to be honest. Now, my personal build is I have Ray of Frost and Root of Power, and I run Thermal Void. A lot of people run Comet Storm. But I'll keep on moving through the tiers. Ice Nova is good. It's not, actually, this whole tier is difficult because it's all pretty good. Splitting Ice is even, most of the time I just use it for dungeons. My dungeon build looks a lot like this. Although you can, I think that's probably the only build I run Splitting Ice with. Is this exact build with Ray of Frost on Rune. You pop all of your cooldowns on Rune, and then you just Ray, and everything dies, and you burst to like 1,000,000 DPS. So that's pretty nice. And I guess I'll just continue to talk. Frozen Touch is mostly only a DPS increase, it seems like, if you're taking Thermal Void. So if you're running the Comet Storm build with Splitting Ice, then you can even run some like Cenarius and Xavius and like Mythic Ursoc, and anywhere that there's going to be extra targets, it's going to be pretty nice. It's not a bad talent at all. Ice Nova, I don't personally have a lot of experience with. I don't really run it because to me, the choice is normally between these two, but Ice Nova, you can get a lot of damage by, casting a Frostbolt into a Flurry, or into your Brain Freeze proc, and then guaranteeing the crit on Ice Nova. I can't really go over that personally because it always just felt wonky to me. Sometimes you're holding one or the other, trying to wait for the other one to come up, and so it just felt odd to me. But especially with Rune of Power and Rain of Frost, maybe with Incanter's Flow and the Thermal Void build, you could run Ice Nova, but I could be completely wrong about that. So on this particular talent, just don't listen to me at all. Again, back to, this is my build for bosses. So I just run Ray, I'd run a Thermal Void, I try to extend out as much as possible because Comet Storm is really hard to line up with Rune, and you even lose a global when you're in it, and it doesn't really do that much damage. It does as much damage as like one Ice Lance that has 1 stack of Chain Reaction on it, which is your artifact. This artifact talent. Every time you crit with Frostbolt, you get 20% damage on Ice Lances. And it stacks up to 6 times. So if you have 1 stack of that, then it's going to outdamage Comet Storm currently. Unless I'm missing something completely, but I don't know, it's going to do like 450k, and that's about how much my Ice Lances do. It might be 2 stacks of Chain Reaction, though. But it's, to me, I'm just not a fan of it. I'd rather run Thermal Void and try to extend out after the Ray of Frost. But we'll keep on. This whole tier right here, you're probably gonna have to play around with it, but I generally just switch in between these two. I have Splitting Ice and Frozen Touch, and I run Splitting Ice in dungeons, and I do run Comet Storm, sadly, in dungeons, and that's pretty much that. For the next tier, you have all these, which the only useful one is Ice Flows, and I mean, maybe Rune of Frost would be good in like super high Mythic Plus if you have like Necrotic, I guess. That would be it'd be useful there. But Ice Flows is the only thing that's going to give you a DPS gain from using it if you use it correctly. So I don't really think there's much to talk about there. For this tier, I don't think anybody plays Unstable Magic. If you just don't want to have to cast anything, then I guess you could use that. But even still, like, Arctic Gale is better passive damage on an ability you're already going to be using on a single target rotation. So there's that. Let's see here. The argument between Arctic Gale and Frost Bomb, a lot of people just don't like Frost Bomb. They don't like trying to keep it up. It's really tough to keep up, especially in a boss fight. It's really annoying to try to keep up during Thermal Void because you don't want to waste that cast time on something that could otherwise be giving you procs to extend your Thermal Void even further. So a lot of people play Arctic Gale with the full Thermal Void build, which would look something similar to this. But you could also run Rune with it. I just, personally, with the full Thermal Void build, it just seems like in counterspell it's a little bit easier because you're not trying to hold on to anything and, you know, try to stack it with Rune of Power. So sometimes you have like weird cooldowns trying to line up with it. It's just, to me, it's a lot easier to extend my Thermal Void much further. And the DPS change isn't that different because of how spread out the damage in the Thermal Void build is, because you're not running Ray, so you don't really have like obnoxious amounts of burst. So we have Frost Bomb, which I personally run. This is pretty much my build for everything, except sometimes I'll run Splitting Ice on bosses with ads. So I can't really give you the exact numbers either. The Arctic Gale and the Frost Bomb are pretty close. I think if you have like 4 targets, so in dungeons, Arctic Gale is actually almost guaranteed better, because I think you'd have to get like 4. If they're gonna last long enough for 2 bombs to go off, you'd have to get like 4 ice lances into each bomb to match the damage value of Arctic Gale. And I could be completely wrong on that, but I mean, especially in a dungeon, we don't want to be worried about when you're trying to just AoE everything down anyway. You don't really want to worry about having one ad alive and then try to base all of your damage off of that ad, especially when you run into those situations where it's like a bunch of slums or a bunch of imps and you want to try to AoE them all down. I guess it could depend on the specific dungeon. Like if you know which one you're going in, you could just come back to your class hall and change between the two if you really think there's going to be big ads that you want to get down a little bit better, because Frostbomb is 100% better for single target, which is why I run it in my raid build. But a lot of people just like that Arctic Gale is just passive damage. You're already going to be using Blizzard anyway, so people just don't want to have all the extra management of Frostbomb. But again, even if you don't have 100% Frostbomb uptime on every ice lance, it's still going to out damage Arctic Gale on single target. The last tier, don't take Glacial Spike. It's complete shit. So unless you have like 9,000% mastery, I just can't see Glacial Spike being better, really. I mean, the amount of mastery that you would need, plus crit, it'd have to be like a mastery crit build, and even then that would it'd be a gimmick. Like it's bad. Please don't use it. But then you have between Thermal Void and Comet Storm. Now, this will basically decide what your other abilities will be. Sometimes, I guess, Comet Storm is... I hate that it does no damage because it looks fantastic. It's like probably one of my favorite looking abilities in the game. So it sucks that it is so terrible. But it only has a 30-second cooldown. You cast it on cooldown. You don't really have to pay attention to much. If it's off cooldown, then you use it, and then you cast a Frostbolt. So it's not like there's a lot to manage there. Thermal Void, I mean, most people know about Thermal Void. Every time you Ice Lance, you get 2 more seconds on your Icy Veins. It's pretty nice. I even run this with my Ray of Frost build. A lot of people run Comet Storm with their Ray of Frost build because they don't want to waste 10 seconds of their Icy Veins and then have to extend out, try to extend out to get further use out of it after they've already used 10 seconds of it. So they feel like they're losing a lot of value whenever they use Ray and Rune, especially since Rune, you're basing a lot of your damage off the Rune, and you want to try to fit as much burst in as possible. So sometimes you might have a Comet Storm. Plus, they just like to have an extra button to hit that they can just hit on cooldown. And it's not really something that has to have a lot of synergy with the other abilities. So that's why some people run Comet Storm, some people run Thermal Void. There's, again, I personally just run Thermal Void, even with my Ray of Frost build. I just like it. There's too much. You could get some random RNG, and it just extended out so much further. Extend your damage out so much further, and it's just nice to have. I probably won't go through too much rotation stuff in this. I was still not perfect at the Ray of Frost build. I've only been running it for like 3 or 4 days, but a lot of people have been asking on forums and on Alter Time and on the Mage Discord that they've just been asking for some suggestions on what kind of talents they should run. I feel like hopefully this is a little bit more comprehensive than, and it is a whole video just talking, so I know it's not going to be super useful, but hopefully that helps. The rotation is, it's obviously with Ray of Frost, it's a joke. I mean, it's not a joke. It's actually really fun outside of Ray of Frost. The Ray of Frost is the worst part about it because you just stand there for 10 seconds. And if, you get rot and somebody next to you isn't smart enough to move or whatever, then it's really annoying. But it's really good in dungeons. And it's probably our top damage right now. They were pretty even, and then they buffed Ray of Frost by 5%. Now we are where we are. And now everybody's asking questions. And hopefully this helps. I don't know. I could go across the rotation, I guess, but it's not really going to help, really. I mean, you could watch me do the rotation, but it's not going to help at all. So, if you play through it, just try swapping around your talents, playing through it, getting used to the rotation. So, but if you, if you listen this far, then you got Ray of Frost, and Root of Power is part of those are the only 2 talents that are lead to 100%. You have to use those together. If you don't run Ring of Power with Ray of Frost, you're probably going to do crap damage. And this is my personal raid build. Some people run it differently. They'll run this for no Ray, and they just extend Thermal Void as well as they can. And some people run it with Comet Storm. And then for your dungeons, you definitely want Ray of Frost, and you probably want Splitting Ice. So, hopefully that helps people out. I know it's just a whole video of talking. I have logs up. My name's fucking Mages. So, if you want to see what kind of damage it does, or you want to see where the majority of my damage is coming from, then you can. I've run several different talents through several different dungeons. Or several different raids. So, hopefully that's helpful. You guys have a good one.